Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic.
The sound of two beeping monitors, in a steady rhythm, was the only thing heard in a white room. All was eerily quite unlike other places. This is due to this being a different than a regular hospital. This was a place even Anbu, seals protected it, never went. It was known only to the Hokage and any select medical personnel was permitted to enter or give treatment to those within. In grand total, only 2 doctors and 4 nurses know this area. But no one knew they worked more the then Shady Leaf General Hospital. The hours were rough due the very small staff and having to keep appearance of normal medical career. Currently one of the nurses was coming in to check on the 2 only patients that have been in this small restricted hospital for the past, almost, 8 years. The young nurse came in pushing a cart full of needed material to take care of her 2 charges. But today upon coming in she noticed something different. On of the monitors was beeping at a faster rate commonly asserted with an away patent. Due to the small curtain divider that gave privacy to anyone just coming in the door to the patent. Interested, the nurse moved the cart to the side and went to the divider. Pushing it back she looked in at the 2 beds pushed together and the hands of the 2 cupped together. Looking further up to the head of the one on the left she noted her female charge was still asleep. Turning her head to the right she met confused blue satire eyes still dim with sleep. She gasped, drawing the attention of the now awake male patent. She rushed over, drawing her pen light from her pocket and gently tilting his head, checking his pupil reaction, then proceeded with the other test. Nodding her head, she reached behind his head and activated a seal that was on the wall. The seal flared and the mark on her hip tingled, letting her know it was working. "Can you tell me your name and where you are?" she asked gently. He nodded and opened his mouth only to start coughing. The nurse motioned to wait a moment and left to get the cart. Bringing it over, she opened a chest that contained ice and some small vials in a plastic container. Lifting the plastic containers with the vials up, she reached down and procured a plastic cup and placed a few ice chips in it. Returning to the man, she slightly tilted the bed slowly with a switch just enough to that he wasn't fully laying down. The man closed his eyes and took a deep breath only to cough again. Due to muscle deterioration from lack of use, he couldn't even cover his mouth. He had a light covering of facial hair, colored sunny blonde, that matched his unruly hair on his head that was slicked back with a hair cloth cover. The nurse brought the ice cup to his mouth and helped get one in his mouth. "Easy now, you haven't eaten or drank anything for a while now," she said gently. The man took a bit and a few more ice chips. She repeated her earlier. "Minato Namikaze and I'm in Sector Silence. Only very few know of this area. Only Ks and VIPs are treated here in emergency cases." He looks around as the nurse nods while checking both the lines of the patents. Then his heart rate picks up again, making the nurse look up to see him looking around. "What's wrong?" she asked, taking his vitals. "My son. My baby boy, where is he?" he asked anxiously, looking around. The nurse dropped his hand and went to the charts at the end of the bed. She flipped a page or two before reattaching it to the hook. "There is a note that does confirm you and her having a child, but when? How? You're not married." She gasps. "Is it a bastard child? Did she trick you? Do you want me to send her to the pits of Anbu?" she shouted, scrawling at the red head lying next to him. Then before she knew it, she was on the floor gasping for breath and trembling. The killer internet was fast and strong. Visions of her death danced before her eyes, each more gruesome than the last. Then. Now Minato-kun, you mustn't do this in your condition or you may relapse and your son will continue without any parents. Chided a voice from behind the divider. "Almost no one but very few people know about your marriage and that it was before you were named Hokage. Nor that the both of you started a family." The voice in person came around the divider. It was the third Hokage, and stepped up to help the poor nurse off the ground. Behind him 5 others appeared wearing medical garb, 3 females, 1 male. The key vanished and Minato breathed heavily for a few minutes as one of the doctors, the male, stepped around the third and nurse, scrawling at said nurse. He stepped up to the fourth's side and begun checking him over while the female doctor went to check the still unconscious redhead. Sarutobi whispered a few words to the nurse he had helped out and she nodded and went to stand at the far wall in parade rest head down, ashamed. Sarutobi waited while Minato was checked and calmed down. Namikaze-sama, please tell me the last thing you remember. The male doctor asked. Now done with this basic checkup, he started chakra therapy on his muscles starting with neck and shoulders. One of the new nurses had taken the chart and went to the one against the wall to ask what has been done and any observations made. While the last went to help with the chakra therapy starting at the toes and feet. By this point Minato looked worn out and ready to sleep, but he nodded and cleared his thought. Kushina had gone into labor around midnight on the 9th. I sent a clone to Bawako-sama, our chosen midwife. Then took Kushina to the secured location while using my Anbu mark to inform the Anbu commander of the situation. Anbu were already on site upon arrival and the protection security seal almost finished. Bawako and her team were waiting inside with all medical supplies at the ready. Kushina's labor took hours until she was fully dilated and ready to push. Chuckles blushes, with many threats and vivid descriptions on killing and maiming, how to carry them out. Due to the nature, being a Jinchuriki, of the birth, she couldn't have any medication to ease the pain, so by the time she could start pushing she was tired from both fighting the Kyuubi and birthing. But finally, around 6 or 7 that evening our boy was born, Chuckles, with a healthy set of lungs. Bawako had him sorted quickly and was carrying him over. I wanted to see him, but small laugh, she snubbed me saying, "Mother first," and walked past reminding me of the seal on Kushina. I never sensed him. Minato closed his eyes in grief and frustration. While I was looking at the seal just about to tighten it back up, Bawako-sama and her staff fell to the ground. I believe they died instantly. I am so sorry, Hiruzen-sama. Minato said, looking up at the third only to see a small smile at his late wife's actions to another Hokage, but his eyes were suspiciously shiny. The third gestured in a way to say it was okay and to continue. From then on he spoke of the interaction that made him flash out of the cavern with his child. Then Minato went into how Kyuubi was ripped from his previous jailer and his fight with the masked Uchiha who later flees when Minato broke his hold on the Kyuubi, to finally the fight with the Biju. Then to what he last remembered of the sealing of the Kyuubi and again asking about his son, though never saying the child's name again, only referring to him as his baby boy and little one. At the end of the tale Minato was slipping back into slumber before having been answered about his precious child. The 2 doctors and 4 nurses turned to the third Hokage. Is his son dead? Is that why the child was never written down? Asked the female doctor, looking quite sad about the hero of the village losing his child just after he had been born. Forgetting about the exact words of who he used the sealing, not even thinking about it. No, his son still lives and right under everyone's nose too. Chuckles, he can be a bit of a troublemaker, but most of it is due the unjust treatment he receives, and for a bit of attention, whether negative or positive. Sarutobi looked sad at this statement. He was chewing on the end of his unlit pipe in thought. He missed the surprised looks of the medical staff around him. But Lord Hokage, I do not recall any child of the family name Namikaze. Stated the female doctor again. Thinking of the many files she and the male doctor as head of the hospital in main part of the village that mostly dealt with ninja, and the son of a Hokage would fall into their care as well. You have met him actually, and frequently. He is often attacked by angry villagers and a few disobedient ninjas. Said the third, internally chuckling at making them try and figure out who it was. After a few moments, the 2 doctors finally figured it out. The female one gasped and went to find a seat, while the male hung his head down and clenched his fist at his side. Compared to the nurses, these 2 doctors were the only one he fully entrusted with the child and knew by their reaction that he had done the right thing. The other medic nins were found not to be trusted, like the one not long after the poor child had been born had attempted to smother the infant with his hand and blame it on a natural cause. After that the third had taken the child until he was about 8 or 9 months old. Minato-sama used his own child for the sealing. stated the male doctor, and that child has suffered daily due to that, and yet Naruto is still a sweet child. He turned back to Minato and redoubled his efforts to restore him to health, so he may reclaim his son as soon as possible. The female stood and placed her glowing green hands on the female's, Kushina, head. Hokage-sama, you know, we have reported that Kushina-sama has shown signs of waking. As of last week on Wednesday, I will do all I can to help her to awaken again. You two nurses come and start muscle restoration therapy on her, ordered the female doctor as the male waved the third over. The fourth nurse is still by the wall pushed off and started to walk to Minato's side. What do you think you're doing? No one requested you and you are still in trouble from before. Return to your position now, snarled the female doctor, glaring at the nurse in question. I am gonna do my job and help the fourth recover. I believe you are wrong. That thing is in no shape or form our greatest hero's son. He was simply there to help her keep the demon contained, and his mind might still be messed up from that demon's chakra. It is toxic after all. I highly doubt he would fall for the foreigner trash. She went to continue towards Minato when a strong hand gripped his shoulder. She looked over and tumbled at what she saw. The third had grabbed her and had fury written on his face. As of this moment you are suspended and will be in Anbu care until it is safe to release you. Your family will be told that you are currently being held until everything is resolved. Once Minato is up and better able to concentrate, he will decide your fate. Insulting a Hokage's family with 2 disrespects, and your actions, in one sitting can range anywhere from extensive prison time or even execution. It is considered treason for mistreating his family. And before you argue, I oversaw their quiet marriage and have full knowledge of their child's conception to birth and current status among the village. The third growled out, gripping her shoulder harder, by the end his killer intent leaking all over as he spoke, only to be pulled back upon ending his speech. He looked and nodded to the other 2 doctors and 3 nurses who were slightly shaken by his ki. The nurse he was holding was pale and shaking fiercely, looking down on the ground. If Hiruzen wasn't holding her, she may have ended up on the floor. I will be back after a bit. Please keep me updated, and if he reawakens before my return, call me and I will come immediately. With that, he escorted the one nurse out and gently shut the door. The doctors continued working, shaking off the tremors of the Hokage's ki with a sigh of relief of being away for that situation. Tension was still high though. Lord Third should leave her to young Naruto for prank practice, stated the male doctor into the silent room. This caused many, much needed, chuckles from everyone else in the room with nods of agreements. Everyone has heard and seen just how creative the child could be when given the opportunity. With a free practice dummy, he would practice until perfection of that one of many pranks. To any who were not biased to what the poor child held, they took note of his talents and effort put into his actions. Few doctors and nurses could be trusted with his care after a few attempts on the child's life. Hokage's office. After dropping off the nurse to an Anbu on the way out and leaving him with a message with Ibiki to not touch her or allow anyone to speak to her, code silence, until further notice, due to having to keep this a complete secret. She would be put in a silence chamber for prisoners that required only select people to question them and listen into their information. Making note to ensure Danzo or Minion didn't speak to her. He headed to his office while thinking that he would like to see how Minato would like to get reacquainted with his son and how he would like to be introduced to the child. But first he had to get Minato up to date with events after his passing, to current events of the now. He did decide that he would take his crystal ball with him in order to give Minato a glimpse of his son only after reporting his failure and the troubles the council has given about Minato's legacy. He only hoped Minato could allow him to make up for his failure. On a side note, he also should bring up Minato's last member of Team Minato, Hitaki Kakashi. The boy has a death wish with the way he kept taking S-rank missions, though he frequently checked on Naruto from the shadows, and if gone for longer than a month he would ask for messages, if allowed, to be sent bi-weekly to him just to make sure his sensei's child was safe. From the dark he would protect Naruto as best that he could. Though from time to time he would ask odd questions about the boy. Like if he was a censor or something because he would pick Kakashi or another Anbu out in their hiding location. But when Naruto was asked about it, he would just shrug and eat or ask for a hug. Hours later, he received another pulse from his mark on his hip, but he was in the middle of assigning missions and he couldn't just leave without suspicion falling on him for leaving without any cause. So, he waited it out, and after another hour, a grand total of 5 hours and 5 minutes since he was last there, he started his trek to the hidden med room, keeping his presence hidden and dismissing his Anbu guard. In his hands a small bundle of scrolls, one medium book and a box with his crystal ball in it, all hidden in a ceiling scroll on his arm, and replicas left in his office. Sector protection. Their work continued with light muttering for another 3 hours with small breaks in between. While not very chakra intensive, it was time consuming and load of consideration in order not to accidentally injure the reviving muscles, though it couldn't be a full revive of the lax muscles, otherwise they would not heal right. This was more of a speed up for getting started. Minato and Kushina, once she woke, would be in physical therapy for months to a year afterwards. More hours passed and finally the female doctor cheered happily and started normal procedure of checking a coma-induced patents just reawakening when Kushina turned he head toward Minato and yawned the like. Minato then started coughing a bit. "Where am I, Minato?" she whispered in a raspy voice once done coughing. Ice water chips were brought to her and she very weakly reached it and tried to hold it, but the nurse kept a hold. Said nurse instructed her not to chew if but to on the piece slowly. After a few minutes, she was questioned like Minato in basic information and to tell her side of the story, which was recorded by the doctor who had already tapped her shoulder upon her getting the ice chips in a cup to her. "Where is Naruto, our son?" Kushina asked scared. "I know you are worried, but you need to know a few things, but first I would like to reawaken Minato-sama and wait for Lord Third to come back and keep everyone on the same page." She looked at the male doctor working on Minato and nodded to him. He placed his hand on Minato's head. Waiting a few minutes for him to come around again. He heard a sniffle and looked over to his left and saw Kushina with tears in her eyes. Without even thinking, he forced his body to respond in order to reach over. Remember, the beds are pushed together to make one large one, to her and caress her face softly, laying on his side. "Shoo, love, everything is okay," he whispered to her, not even noticing his audience that had just about 4 females gushing in awes at the interaction between lovers and a smile on the male's face, thinking of his recently married daughter and hoping she had married a man like Minato-sama. Everyone watched as Minato whisper and comfort his wife. The doctors allowed the couple to interact and talk, while they took a much-needed break. One nurse went to get a bit of food for everyone, including light, bland soup for the 2 patents. They would ask after their son repeatedly and not getting much in answers. After a bit, the 2 doctors at least agreed to inform them that he was alive after they started to get upset, thinking that he was dead or something of that nature. When asked how they survived, Minato stated he wasn't sure since the Shinigami should have eaten his soul, and Kushina only stated she would only talk once Lord Third arrived. Kushina lightly dosed in Minato's arms before food arrived, and not long after the Third stepped in again. Upon stepping past the divider, he was pleasantly surprised to see the awake couple cuddled down together. Minato with his arms wrapped around his wife and her head just under his chin, one had running through her hair which was way shorter than before their coma. Minato's beard and mustache had been shaved off at some point in his absence and both looked to have been sponge-bathed as well. The medical staff stood at his entrance and bowed. He waved them off back to resting until needed. The male doctor brought over a plush chair for the 3rd Hokage to sit in, while handing Kushina's statement, and went back to his staff to finish eating and looking over the charts with the rest. Hiruzen sat and cleared his throat. "I know you have many questions and would like to see your son, but first you need to hear everything I have to say before we do anything. First, I would like to inform you it is 2 months short of being 8 years since you have been in a coma, and lots has happened within the village and with the council." Here he paused and saw he had their undivided attention after a few moments for them to wrap their minds around time change. They could see his weariness in his posture and eyes. This worried them. He sat back and put his unlit pipe in his mouth, the started again. He started with the immediate events after when he went to announce Minato's death after securing his and Kushina's body and having Mud-Blood doppelganger made, and that about his request that Naruto be seen as a hero, along with not announcing his heritage for fear of assassination from Iwa. How some people started treating the Uchiha after someone melting seeing a Sharingan in the Kyuubi's eyes before it was released. Then the reaction of the village and that of the council. The large argument between shinobi and civilian that ended with the third stomping on all attempts of killing their child. He informed them of the Ino Shaka Cho trying to adopt Naruto and the arguments that brought then how both Hyuga and Uchiha tried power plays for a child none had yet to see. How Inuzuka clan head stated she would honor the request and so would the Aburame, per Shibi, though will take no actions to assist nor any ill actions to the child. How Danzo and his two teammates tried making him into a weapon saying that was what the fourth had meant. It was with a grave heart that Naruto ended up in the orphanage. Then explained that a bit over a year later Orochimaru defected and explained why. Lord Third explained how at age 4 they lost track of Naruto for a year and a half due to the Hyuga incident. He explained the incident that took months to get the situation under control without a war. Only to be found living on the streets by a returning Anbu, code-named Dog, who was just returning from a 2-year mission. Naruto had seen the mask before and knew he would be safe, so when a battle-weary Anbu came into the Hokage tower holding the child, the Hokage and Dog, planned what to do while medics were called. He pointed to the ones behind him, and his injuries treated. He would not speak of what happened or where he was all this time. Naruto had stayed in the tower until they had found him an apartment that not long after became his own building once news spread through the building of their new resident. The boy was threatened continually, stuff thrown in windows and walls inner and outer written on. Naruto could never venture out on October 10th festival dedicated to the attack and sacrifice of the ones lost in said attack. The third Hokage explained events of the village in Naruto's career as a prankster starting at a little over 5 years old, though Anbu could not find and hold him since he always ran and hid surprisingly well, after he started the academy. He went on to other village events non-Naruto related for a bit, covering almost another 2 years up until today's events including the one nurse, which both Minato and Kushina looked angry about. He mentions how Naruto was starting to outrun his poor Chunin at the current moment with a chuckle. He heard the medical staff chuckle too and mentions of a betting pull, one he even participated in. I know a simple apology will never be enough to say how sorry I am about what has happened to your son, but I will do what I can to make it up to you and to Naruto, for I have lied to him and said you were both dead and he does not know your names. I was gonna reveal it to him when he was older and less likely to spill the beans, so to speak. But once he said that you were his idol, points at Minato, I knew I couldn't do that until I was absolutely sure he could keep it quiet. He does lots of things for attention and I worry he would forget if he thought it would bring him attention. Lord Third had his head hung and his hands folded in his lap, quite insured as he waited for an answer. Sheets rustled, a weight in his lap and arms wrapped around him, his sight filled with red hair. She had shuffled over to him by crossing over Minato. Hiruzen was like a second father after she had come here to Kohan. Listen, old man, she said lovingly, looking back at Minato. Both Minato and I agree you have done all you could with being pulled out of retirement and sacrificing coming out of retirement in order to protect our son. She put a finger to his mouth when he went to protest. You may not have said it, but we both know you are tired after holding office for so long. You rolled with everything thrown at you. Yes, we are sad and upset about what has happened to our son, but we know you did what you could while protecting him. Now I see your crystal ball box and I must see our son. Kushina demanded. Hiruzen nodded with a chuckle and a subtly wipe at his eyes. The two doctors helped Kushina back into the bed since sliding down was easier than trying to climb up in her current condition, though they were amazed with the amount of movement not only she displayed but Minato's as well. Lord Third brought out his crystal ball and set it up so both Minato and Kushina could see the ran through a series of hand seals, then waved his hand over the top of the ball. The ball glowed for a minute as flashes signified it looking at light speed for what the casters wished to be found. It cleared to show a classroom setting and a young blonde boy with sleepy blue eyes and his cheek leaning heavily on a hand. Kushina chuckled, and grabbed Minto's hand, at the sheer boredom on her child's face. Minato couldn't pull his eyes off his son's face. The fact that his son was falling asleep didn't matter to him at that moment. After watching their son for a few moments as he fell asleep, they started to notice somethings about him. Even Sarutobi had an odd look on his face. I just thought of this, but it's been 2 or 3 months since I have seen him and he looks a bit thin and tired. He chewed on his pipe, thinking about why that might be. Maybe. No, I did tell my new secretary he was allowed in anytime for any reason, unless she is disobeying, but then my Anbu guards should have seen this and informed me of this happening. I will be looking into it. The last time Naruto was around me was when he pranked me by putting bubble solution in my pipe and I was blowing bubbles in an important meeting with the daimyo. Chuckles all around. The daimyo was confused when instead of smoke I had bubbles. He thought it was me trying to cut back when I explained who must have done it. We had quite the laugh and I do believe the meeting went smoother after that. Sarutobi had a smile on his face when he spoke about it. But he did show concern about not remembering not seeing him for so long between the renegotiations with Kumo and the Chunin exams which he had to attend in Suna later this month. He had just gotten the list of who had made the 3rd exam. Only 4 out of the 12 are from Konoha. One of them was Hana Inuzuka was one of them, and he had sent word to his mother and brother. He should have word whether or not they were go with his envoy. Redirecting his attention to the crystal ball, he took in the boy's looks, really studying him. Naruto seemed tired and a bit sour sitting there his seat, but the most noticeable was how thin he was. The child that was 50 pounds last time he saw him now looked more like 30, maybe even less, which was scary because Naruto was already a bit thin by at least 5 to 8 pounds. Mostly due to his ramen diet and not really being able to get all he could from the stores when he did go grocery store. No matter what Sarutobi did, he had a hard time getting stores and civilians to accept allowing Naruto into their stores and giving a fair price. Though when he could spare someone, mostly an Anbu or trusted Junin, to follow Naruto if he said he had to shop for something and document the shop and amount along with items purchased. The doctors at the small table going over the past 8 years as a review of what they may have to bring to the attention of the 2 patents that have just awoken and figure out the odd anomaly of why the patents are recovering a bit faster than typical of cases similar to theirs. There was one thing they had to bring up and the news was not good. Lord Third, we have an issue we would like to discuss with the Namakazes, please. The male doctor says while standing up after letting the 2 parents watch their child from the crystal ball for a while. The third nodded his head and shut the crystal ball off, much to the parents' sorrow. They turned their heads to the male doctor with full attention on him. First, let me introduce my staff. My name is Ando Jiro, just call me Jiro. My partner is Dr. Mizumaki Kaide and our nurses are Kasumi, Izumi and Hoshi. The other one that's not here is named Naomi. It is our honor to be attending you both. First, we have some questions to you both. I know that the Uzumaki were known for being fast recovers and long-lived, but the damage you both received was extreme. By all accounts you should have died that night, but a strange chakra like the Kyubi is in both your systems. Do either of you know what this similar chakra is, because everyone knows that the Kyubi was sealed within Naruto-sama? Inquired Dr. Jiro. Minato turned to his wife briefly, to which she patted his shoulder, then looked at the audience in front of the bed. Leaning closer to rest against Minato a bit, she thought for a moment on how she was going to explain how this happened. When the Shinigami went to take Minato's soul, I attached mine to Minato's. Thus, voiding the contract with the Shinigami, and Minato's soul was released. Though I don't think Shinigami thought we would live with our injuries. Even now I can feel his eyes on Minato. I will have to go to the shrine and maybe see if we can work something out so when we do pass, me and Minato can be together instead of separate. Kushina pauses to think, placing her right hand index figure to her chin and tilting her head to think. As for Kyubi being in both of us, well, due to me being a past Jinchuriki and bonding my soul to Minato, who took the yin half of the Kyuubi and sealed the yang half in Naru-chan. I modified your seal Minato so we both have the healing effect that the Kyuubi's chakra has. Since Uzumakis are trained from a young age how to write with their chakra, it was easy to change it. Kushina says, casually, thinking nothing of it. Minato mentally sweat drips at the idea but remembers the lessons she gave him. Though she rarely uses fuinjutsu, she really was a brilliant master at it when needed. She was more into kenjutsu than anything, women and sharp pointy things, shudders. Simply amazing, Kushi-chan, all that in a matter of moments. Said the Sandaime Hokage, amazed at the talent he didn't know she had. Naruto got his personality mostly from Kushina and hardly passed his classes. He wrote down some notes on his scroll with her previous statement on what happened from her view. I'm so thankful I have a brilliant, loving, strong wife. I'm so happy I don't have to go on without you. Naruto is so lucky to have you and I'm not worthy enough. Minato says as he brings her close and slowly kisses her cheek and works his way down her neck. She started giggling and the two started whispering sweetnesses to each other, making the people around them blush as it starts getting heaver in their play petting. The Sandaime cleared his throat to politely interrupt the lovers, only to have to try a few more times before the blushing couple partly separated. Yes, well, now that some of the medical stuff is cleared, is there anything else medical needed before we can plot returning Minato's and Kushina's return to the living? Along with getting both Naruto and Kakashi reunited as well. Stated the Sandaime Hokage. Yes, there is one more matter, one that is not good news. Lady Kushina, Lord Minato, due to the injuries sustained and the afterbirth not being properly taken care of, you will not be able to have any more children. The womb was removed that night and Lady Kushina will have to be on medication from now on. My condolences on this troubling news. Stated Dr. Kaide with her head bowed along with the other medical staff present. The Sandaime lowered his head in sadness for the news, remembering the both saying they were Goanna have a large family. Minato tightened his grasp on Kushina as she started to tremble. The trembling became heaving cries and he turned and fully embraced her and allowed her to cry. His tears visible to all others as he rested his head on her shoulder. The room fell quiet with the exception of cries of chances and dreams lost. The tears dried after a while with Minato mentioning Naruto and that they still had him to care for. It became a focus for her. Sarutobi brought out his crystal ball and showed her Naruto, which she watched over Minato's shoulder as he held her. She then noticed that her own shoulder was wet as she slowly calmed down. She pulled back from Minato and directed his sight to Naruto, who was currently at a playground with what could only be Nara and Akamichi. They were on the geodesic dome, sitting and balancing on the mid to top areas, eating chips, that more than likely came from the young Akamichi, looking up at the sky. The two watched for a bit as the day got longer and then a heartbreaking scene took place. Shikaku Nara arrived and called the two boys that were with Naruto over and grabbed both their hands and walked off. You could see little Naruto clenching his hands as he watched the three walk off with the young Nara boy trying to get his hand out of his father's hand. Even the medical staff started sniffling after seeing the want to hold a parent's hand like that even for just a little bit. They walked back over to the table they were at previously after being waved away by the Sandaime. I believe it is time to discuss how we will reintroduce you to your son in the village. Says the Sandaime, gently placing the glowing crystal ball down. Yes, but first I need 2 scrolls. I need to get a message out to my parents, that is if they are still alive. Minato looks at Sarutobi, who nods. If we're giving Naruto back a family, then we'll make sure the whole family is back. I cannot allow the lies that we're told to continue anymore. Minato growls out. Kushina gently lays her head on his shoulder and half hugs Minato. He told Kushina about his findings after becoming Hokage. He couldn't believe his findings and talked about everything, in the end just letting it go, for that time. But she agreed Naruto will need every family member he could get in order for him to be safe once they came back. If this would be her only child she would ever be blessed with, then every resource would be used in order for him to survive a ninja way of life. Sandame reached for the storage scroll he had brought. He had packed a bit extra in case there was an issue like this. He unrolled the scroll until he got to a seal that had the words office supplies under it and unsealed it. A large stack of scrolls and ink supplies popped out of the seal. Handing Minato a blank scroll and prepping the ink for use as Minato picked up a brush and did practice a few strokes without ink in order to not mess up too bad. Once the ink was placed on a sliding table and moved it to him. Kushina lightly leaned against him as he worked reading what he wrote and giggling at the fox-like way he was going about making his run mother come back to the village. Sandame was curious as to what was being written but was busy prepping his seal in order to have it sealed correctly. The Sandame did not want to make it obvious that the Yondaime was back yet in order to keep these two safe. Minato then started a second scroll and he chuckled to himself as he wrote it. Once making sure the first one was dry, he rolled it up and had Sarutobi place his seal on it while he dried the second one, never once letting Sarutobi read any of it. They were stored in the third's robes for mail later. And the other supplies set aside. Sarutobi looked to Dr. Jiro, who walked over as the last scroll was sealed. Hiruzen waved the doctors back over from their table. Jiro answered the summons. "Anything else you have for us?" asked Hiruzen, looking at Jiro. "We have a few things before you start your planning for reintroductions of parents and child." Jiro turned to the two on the bed. "Until further notice, you will be requested not to use chakra. Your chakra coils have not been used in any other way other than year 1 of an academy student. So we must start there and work back up to Junin level chakra usage. This, along with physical therapy, will be needed. By Kaide and I's calculation, Minato, you will be ready by your son's birthday. Kushina, you will be a bit longer due to the stress of giving birth and battle wounds received. She won't be walking for another 3 months after Naruto's birthday. I think Naruto would love having his parents back on his birthday, don't you?" asked Jiro, reading off the clipboard, with a smile on his face, in his hands and bowing after the report. Minato thought about it. If he was back by that time frame, he, and hopefully his parents, would be able to make sure both his wife and child were safe. By Sarutobi's information earlier about the area attacked by the Nine Tails, they no longer had a house. That would need to be fixed if they started up a house design now, and if he could have Sarutobi lend money for it until their account was back up. Minato picked up a scroll and started drawing floor plans and measurements he wanted, Kushina whispering ideas in his ear from time to time and him adding it in the side notes. Everyone watched in quiet, waiting for them to do or say something else, but just watching the loving interaction. With a few questions on what Naruto might like. Things like color, orange, anything about his current liking, place he would love to still have, his balcony with hammock and plants. Hiruzen-sama, we will need you to help us until our accounts are up and we are ready to go out. For now, if we are to have a place ready for Naruto to live with his family, we will need to replace our house. The sooner it is started the better, and it will need to be made rush order, but the money. Hiruzen, either we will have to risk exposure or we will have to borrow from you until we can get to our account returned. We will pay you back upon getting our account back if you help, Minato said, looking up. I will have it started first thing in the morning, and the carpenters along with a special Anbu will be on this. It should be done quicker. You remember Tenzo, correct? He has grown a lot since you last seen him. Hiruzen said. Minato smiled and nodded, glad to hear that this would not be an issue, then turned back to his floor plans, and hearing the one little boy has grown up and still alive. Now as for our plans regarding Naruto, Minato said, picking up another scroll while smiling, setting aside the floor plans for now. Next morning, the Hyugas were disturbed by the sound of a lot of equipment moving past their walls and down the road to an empty lot of 10 acers. Many genin, with their senseis, and few chunin were walking together, carrying equipment, talking about the orders they were called in early by the Hokage to begin for an important client. Words overheard were about rich and royal, along with whispers of a long deadline refund. One Anbu appeared in front of the Hyuga guards with a scroll for the clan head. One guard took the scroll and went inside as the Anbu disappeared. A knock was heard within the main branch's dining room, interrupting the early meal. The person knocking was called in and upon entering bowed and made his way to the clan head, then left to return to his post. This person was Hyuga Hiyashi, elder twin brother and clan head for the last 11 years. Hiyashi pried open the seal after seeing it was from the Hokage, then read it over, the Hyuga elders looking up from their meals waiting for news of what was within the letter. Lord Hokage is just informing and apologizing in advance for any noise and disturbance we may endure for the next month and 2 weeks. This building project is in the 10-acre lot near here, may incur on our daily lives. He also states that the noise will be between the hours of 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. in order to not infringe too much on our lives, and we will know who our neighbors are only once they arrive. They have paid for privacy. Lord Hokage is also requesting that we do not use our dojutsu to see the floor layout, and that seals for their privacy will be placed once everything is built, and we will no longer have to worry about this temporary blind spot in our defense. Anbu will be placed outside our perimeter until the seals are done, says Hiyashi, rolling the scroll up and putting it in his sleeve. The elders murmur amongst themselves for a few minutes, nodding at the thought of having a new and potentially powerful new neighbor. Already they were making plans, since it seemed this clan had money, for either getting them on their side versus the cursed Uchiha's side. Hinata, 7 years, and Hanabi, 2 years, ate their meal only looking up once in a while. A branch member was helping little Hanabi with hers and made sure her head was further down than usually at this announcement. Hinata looked at the time and saw it was time to leave before her guard came to collect her for school. Politely asking her father for permission to leave the table and leaving with a bow to him and the elders. It seemed to her the news would be causing many problems for the household. Many branch members were about to be worked to the extreme in order to re-clean an already clean house. The branch members would needlessly have their caged bird seal activated, and the mere thought just about made Hinata cry, but she knew if she did the elders would have her father punish her. As much as everyone thinks her father a cruel man, he was not, but he couldn't show that to anyone outside of their family rooms. Like many main branch members, the seals had privacy seals in order to protect modesty. That was something her kidnapper took advantage of 3 years ago. Hinata shuddered at the thought. Hinata entered her room and grabbed her large sweat coat with the Hyuga emblem on the shoulders and pulled it on. Then grabbed her backpack that was by the bedroom door, already packed, since she completed her homework last night. She put it on and stepped out and saw Ko already waiting for her like every day, whether school or planned outing. Ko was one of her friends and knew just about everything. Only one thing she kept to herself, about her crush on an outsider boy named Uzumaki Naruto. A taboo in the Hyuga clan unless they had something the Hyuga wanted or absolutely necessary, to prevent too much inbreeding too much. Both Ko and Hinata walked to the school, though this time having to stay more to the side as they saw many people carrying different tools and materials needed to begin the building process, and many boxes and carts carrying out overgrowth, cut trees, and rocks out of the way. Hinata saw some chunin using earth jutsu to level the area out before remembering that they were not allowed to look. Large construction view blockers were just starting to be set up around the area being worked on. The border seemed to just leave the legal amount of space between their land and the Hyuga land. Thoughts of the new family moving in near her occupied her mind the entire way to school. Before she knew it, they were there. Ko bid her farewell and a reminder to do well in school before he took his leave. The school doors would not be unlocked for another 5 minutes, so Hinata went to the tree with a swing her crush normally sat in after school if he stayed until the end. Standing near the tree, she heard a noise. Someone grunting and then a soft thud, coming from the back of the school where the sparring ring and practice fields were. Hinata walked to the corner that lead around the school and peeked over, only to gasp at the sight. It was Naruto and Shibi-sensei. Hinata did not like this sensei, he was always making things hard for Naruto. If someone sneezed, he was thrown out or had to stand in corner either holding water buckets at shoulder height or standing on his head for the whole class. Some students went out of their way to make his life hard, and it's due to all the whispers she heard all over the village no matter where Naruto went. Well, everywhere but one place, Ichiraku's ramen shop. They were friendly to Naruto. Get up, Naruto, you're too slow. Grunt thud. Dead again. Get up, shouted Shibi-sensei as Naruto tried getting up again and was kicked well beyond force required for teaching. Naruto-kun couldn't see it, but their sensei was smiling as he watched his small student try and get up. It looked like they have been here for a while now to Hinata. Naruto was known for his stamina and resilience, so for him to be struggling then, that meant for at least 2 hours of this teaching method. Naruto was coughing and gasping for breath, and Hinata saw blood mixed in with the spit coming out of Naruto's mouth. Hinata, worried, stepped out of the shadows and approached. As she predicted, the teacher stopped what he was doing. He looked at Hinata, then at the position of the sun. Good morning, Hyuga-sama, you're early this morning. Naruto, go clean up, we'll continue training later. Come, Hyuga-sama, I can open the doors for you. Shibi walked past Hinata and went to open the main doors. Hinata held back and looked at Naruto while fidgeting with her fingers, not meeting his eyes as he got up. Ry, you okay, Naruto-kun? Asked Hinata with a stutter. She looked at him shyly and noticed the bright smile he flashed her when he finally stood up. I'm good, what was your name? Naruto asked, scratching the back of his head, embarrassed for not remembering her name. Sorry, but I usually don't have anyone talk to me, so I don't remember names well. But I do remember you are in my class, you're always turning red, it's weird. Naruto rubbing the back of his head while squinting his eyes. Hinata froze at the word weird and hung her head. My name is Hyuga Hinata. Hinata squeaked at the end, then fainted. Naruto freaked out and tried waking the girl, but nothing seemed to work, so he picked her up and ran inside, hoping the nurse was in already. This was one of the few med nins Hokage Gigi approved for treating him, so he knew he would be safe to bring her in as long as he dodges the teachers, that is. Thankfully his luck held out and he didn't get in trouble at all for either holding an unconscious girl or for running in the halls. Entering the ward set up for students, Naruto placed Hinata on the first available bed and turned to see the nurse getting up from her desk. What happened, Naruto-chan? Nurse Izumi as she looked over the Hyuga heiress. Nothing seemed wrong with her, just a bit of dirt, though looking at Naruto he was covered in it, so it could have come from him. We were talking and then she got all red and passed out. I have no idea why, maybe she's sick. Will she be okay? Naruto spoke rapidly. The nurse thought about it and then remembered the rumor going around by the students and staff, then chuckled. Making a mental note to mention this to Kushina and Minato, she's one of the nurses in on the secret. Yes, I do believe she will be just fine. Now let me get a look at you. You look like someone threw you to the ground repeatedly. I see a number of bruises on your face and neck and even your hands. She pulled Naruto to the second bed and gestured for him to remove his shirt. He hasn't found the jumpsuit yet. Naruto was hesitant about removing his shirt, but reluctantly he removed it, only to hear a light gasp and the divider being pulled around his bed. Naruto-chan, how often do you eat? And what does your diet consist of? Also, when was the last time you had a haircut, Naruto-chan? Nurse Izumi asked as she runs her mystic palm over his bruised and thin body. You could count his ribs and his hips were just starting to show. Bruises started to fade with her help and the cubies, not that young Naruto knew. As for Naruto's hair, it was just past his shoulders and as messy as ever. His bangs were swept to the side and tucked behind his ear. Izumi got up and went to her mini fridge as she listened to Naruto list the many ramen flavors he eats, but avoiding listing the last time he ate. She pulled out the large bowl of soup and a 6-inch ham and cheese sub and a bottle of apple juice. It was gonna be her lunch, but she knew Naruto would benefit more from it. Heating the soup in the microwave, she got a try out and set everything up. In her mind she was half hoping Naruto's parents were watching and half hoping they were. She turned to Naruto and wondered why he was thin if he ate that fading food like he said he was. Naruto-chan, when was the last time you shopped or went to Ichiraku's? She asked, and Naruto went silent, which is worrisome. She looked in the small opening and saw his eyes shadowed. It's not that I don't want to shop, but the store I used to go to changed hands and now I don't know where I can shop. It's like the others in the fact I hadn't even pranked them and I'm still treated bad, I still don't know why. But I've been thinking maybe it's not me but maybe, my parents that did something. I mean the old man lies about not knowing them, I know he does, I can feel it. But I think he's doing that because he's trying to protect me, so I can't be mad at my Gigi. As for my hair, I just kind of let it go, I don't want to cut it yet. Naruto said, still not looking up at the nurse who came back with the tray and all the food. She handed it to Naruto but he didn't eat it. Izumi-sensei, I can't eat your food. What will you have for lunch? Asked Naruto. Well, I was thinking of going with you to a restaurant owned by an Akamichi and taking you with me, how does that sound? Izumi asked. Naruto looked up in surprise at the offer but didn't think he would be allowed to enter the establishment. Sure, Choji was a nice kid but he had never met Choji's parents. He wasn't sure that Choji had even mentioned him to his parents, after all the boy was still allowed to play with him. Naruto-chan, I don't think your parents were bad people. I don't remember anyone other than Orochimaru being a corrupt ninja within the last 20 years and you're only 8, so the likelihood of you being from a bad family is very unlikely. Now what makes you think that the Hokage is lying to you? Izumi asked, curious about how Naruto deduced that. Naruto put the spoon down and tilted his head while squinting his eyes. His eyes? I can see that it hurts and he seems to age whenever I ask, so I stopped asking. But that's okay, when I'm Hokage I can find all the answers I want. That's also why I can't blame Hokage Gigi. I think it hurts him just about as much as it hurts me, only worse because he knows. Naruto now had his face downcasted with his hair covering his eyes. Izumi was amazed that this little boy who was ignored and mistreated could be so insightful. Though this was not the first time that this has happened, anyone who really works with this young boy finds out that the hyperactive boy was only a small part of this child. The other nurses and doctors that have worked with him all said the same thing. Though now that Izumi thinks of it, everyone but the one nurse, Naomi, the one in prison, rarely interacted with him. Many times, Naomi would have to change shifts or would leave Naruto in a hospital room untreated and unattended for hours before someone was told that he was there. Izumi wondered why it was only now that she recalled all this. Naomi was always a pleasant woman to be around. She would have to bring that up with the Sandaime when she next saw him. Naruto had gone back to eating and finished just as he first bell rang. Naruto looked up with worry to the nurse, knowing he was gonna be in trouble again. Today they were supposed to unlock their chakra. He really wanted to go and not get kicked out. But knowing Shibi-sensei, he would take advantage of his being late and kick him out, even with a note from Izumi-sensei. He voiced this concern to the nurse, who told him to wait, and she left her office motioning for Naruto to stay. Naruto got bored and went back over to Hinata to see if she would wake, even if it was less than a minute since Izumi. He sat in the provided chair and crossed his arms, not really looking at anything. 3 minutes passed by and Hinata softly moaned, then moved a bit only to slowly open her eyes and sighed. Naruto heard and saw this but waited for Hinata to gather herself. He knew he hated people being near him when he was vulnerable while laying down. It was one of the reasons why he hates the hospital. So many people coming and going when you just laid there. They would hover over you and poke you and even stab you with long and large needles. How can anyone do that to an innocent person? It was a violation of your person. Naruto shook his head of those thoughts, already feeling goosebumps building on his body at those thoughts. He returned his thoughts to Hinata as he observed her without being obtrusive. She was always quiet and shy, never really talking to the other girls, and only a few boys like Kiba and the boy with the bugs. He forgot that boy's name again. Not Naruto's fault. Bug boy was even worse than Hinata. No one even really knew what his face looked like. Bug boy at least interacted more than Hinata with other students. Hey Hinata, you feeling better? Naruto asked, only for the girl to whip her head to him, her lavender eyes going wide and her face going red again. Naruto panicked again as she fainted again. At least she was on a bed this time. Naruto was in such a panic they didn't notice Izumi step inside with one more person having just seen what happened. Goanna have to have a talk with this young lady, thought Izumi with a smile, and maybe Naruto's parents as well. Izumi shook her head, still smiling softly, and went up to Naruto placing her hand on his shoulder to calm him. Naruto-chan, I have someone here that will make sure you can stay in class and will be making sure you're not kicked out unfairly anymore. This is Anbu Inu and he will be in your class from now on until the Hokage can find a better solution. You are to turn over your homework and test to him before and after completion. Izumi said, waving to a tall figure dressed in standard Anbu armor and a snarling dog mask. Silver hair stood out on the Anbu's head. He was familiar to Naruto but he couldn't recall why. Oh, well, it would come to him later while he was working out or something, he could think clearer while doing something. The Anbu named Inu stepped forward and motioned to Naruto to follow him, then Inu turned around and walked back out the door. Naruto turned back to Izumi to explain about Hinata, but was only lightly shoved toward the door. Go Naruto, I saw what happened right after you asked her if she was feeling okay. I'll fix her right up, though I ask you give her a bit of room when you meet her next and only touch her when she okay with it. And no, it's not you, it's something with her heart and mind that causes it. Izumi says with a laugh and again lightly pushes him to the door. You'll understand when you are older, just be nice to her and let her get used to your presence, and please be a bit calmer around her until she stops fainting. With that, Izumi shuts the door behind him after finally managing to get him through the door. She sighed thinking of the conversation she had a bit ago with the Hokage. Flashback. Izumi left the ward at a walk at first, but once she was past the classes and then begun to lightly run up to the Hokage's office. Once there she bypassed the secretary and the two guards, Anbu, in front of the two large doors. She knocked on the door just in case the Hokage was busy with another person. Upon hearing permission to enter, she went in swiftly and shut the door. Hokage.